The night Vogue World 2025 stopped for V. It was a crisp spring evening in Seoul, the kind of night when the city feels like it's holding its breath. The sky clear, the air brushed with a faint chill, and the hum of anticipation rolling like distant thunder. The world's fashion elite had gathered beneath the shimmering canopy of Gwanghwamun Square for Vogue World 2025, a global celebration of creativity, couture, and culture. From Paris to New York, from Milan to Tokyo, few events carried such weight in the sartorial calendar. Yet this year, for the first time, the spotlight was set firmly on Korea, and on one man in particular, Kim Taehyung, better known as V of BTS. When he stepped onto the stage, the crowd fell into a rare kind of silence. Not the awkward pause of uncertainty, but a reverent hush, the sound of awe crystallized. Draped in a modern reinterpretation of the hanbok, Korea's traditional garment, V looked every bit the paradox he's long embodied. Timeless yet contemporary, serene yet magnetic, a living bridge between heritage and high fashion. The garment was designed by Baek Jun-seo, one of Korea's most celebrated avant-garde designers, in collaboration with Maison Louis Vuitton, for whom V has served as a global ambassador. The piece, titled The Whisper of Joseon, blended the structure of the traditional durumagi, the overcoat worn during the Joseon dynasty, with the fluid silhouette of 21st century couture. The fabric shimmered in shades of ink black and pearl gray, woven with silk threads that caught the light like morning dew. Each stitch seemed deliberate, each fold whispering the quiet strength of Korean culture, reborn under the flash of global cameras. "We didn't want to simply modernize the hanbok, we wanted to let it breathe again," Baek Jun-seo later said in an interview with Vogue Korea. V understood that immediately. When he put it on, he didn't just wear it, he inhabited it. A global moment of recognition. The theme of Vogue World 2025, Heritage in Motion, was meant to celebrate the evolution of cultural dress in the global fashion landscape. Yet few could have predicted that one artist's appearance would so perfectly capture the spirit of the night. The moment images of V's entrance hit social media, hashtag Vogue World 2025 and hashtag VHanbok exploded across X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, generating more than 12 million mentions within the first 2 hours. Even Vogue US's official account posted within minutes. VBTS delivers a cultural masterpiece at Vogue World Seoul, a modern hanbok moment that will be remembered in fashion history. For Korean fans, the moment was more than fashion. It was cultural reclamation. The hanbok, once dismissed as outdated or ceremonial, stood reborn before an audience that included Anna Wintour, Naomi Campbell, and Blackpink's Jennie, all seated in the front row. As the night unfolded, whispers rippled through the crowd. This is the future of fashion, and it's Korean, a symbol of dual identity. For V, who has long danced between worlds, pop icon and art enthusiast, global celebrity and introspective artist, the decision to wear a modern hanbok wasn't just aesthetic, it was deeply personal. In a rare pre-show interview with the Korea Herald, he shared, "The hanbok carries a story, not just of Korea, but of resilience. I wanted to show that tradition doesn't have to live in the past. It can walk with us into the future." That sentiment struck a global chord. Western designers in attendance reportedly discussed how the Korean garment's structural grace rivaled haute couture gowns, while international press outlets from Le Monde to Vanity Fair praised the look as the night's most powerful cultural statement. Fashion historian Dr. Elise Kwan, writing for the Business of Fashion, noted, "V's appearance wasn't just a style choice, it was a diplomatic gesture. In a single outfit, He communicated the modernity of Korean culture to an audience that still too often sees Asia as inspiration rather than innovation. The design, merging old and new. The hanbok 5 was constructed from hand-dyed silk and organza, sourced from artisans in Jeonju, a city renowned for traditional Korean textile production. The jacket, or jeogori, maintained its classic collar line but replaced the gorium, traditional ribbon, with a minimalist clasp of brushed titanium, symbolizing the merging of eras. Beneath the outer layer, he wore tailored black trousers cut in the European slim-fit style, juxtaposed with the loose drape of the robe. The subtle embroidery near the hemline depicted white cranes in flight, a traditional Korean motif symbolizing longevity and peace. According to Baek Junseo, the cranes were inspired by a Joseon-era painting housed in the National Museum of Korea. A reminder, he said, that even as we modernize, our wings come from history behind the scenes. Vogue's creative director Edward Enninful reportedly remarked that V's look was the single most talked about styling choice of the entire event. In the official press release, he added, V's ensemble embodied what Vogue World is all about, honoring heritage, breaking boundaries, and redefining elegance in motion. The moment on stage. As V took his place at the center of the runway, lit by a single spotlight, the traditional sounds of the Gyeogyum intertwined with a minimalist electronic beat. The audience was spellbound. His performance, a meditative piece titled Echoes of Soul, was choreographed by contemporary artist An Sung-woo and combined modern dance with traditional Korean gestures, echoing the restrained elegance of court dances from the 18th century. Observers later described the performance as ethereal, cinematic, and a love letter to Korea. The visuals projected behind him, blooming plum blossoms, moving ink brush strokes, and golden sunsets over Gyeongbokgung Palace, evoked the country's spiritual and artistic depth. When the music faded and V bowed, the applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed, and even Anna Wintour was seen leaning forward, her signature sunglasses reflecting the soft glow of the stage lights. In that instant, it was clear. The hanbok was no longer confined to history books or ceremonial holidays. It had just taken its rightful place on the world's most glamorous stage. The making of a global icon, how V became fashion's bridge between East and West. Long before he stood beneath the Seoul night sky in a modern hanbok, Kim Taehyung, V of BTS, had already been quietly rewriting the narrative of what it means to be a global style icon. His evolution wasn't a sudden leap into the luxury world, but a gradual, deliberate ascent, marked by instinct, curiosity, and a rare kind of taste that transcends trend cycles. For years, the global press has described V as the most fashion-forward member of BTS, but that label undersells his artistry. V's relationship with fashion has always been emotional, almost cinematic. Whether on stage or at an airport, his looks have carried the storytelling precision of film stills. He dresses the way he sings, said stylist Kim Young-jin, who worked with BTS during their early Map of the Soul era, with honesty, mood, and a bit of melancholy. That aesthetic sensitivity eventually drew the attention of luxury houses across Europe. By 2022, when Celine's creative director Hedi Slimane invited him to attend the brand's Paris runway show, V's presence caused such a media frenzy that French Vogue called it the most photographed moment of the night. His effortless ability to merge boyish charm with Parisian cool marked him as a muse for a new generation, one less defined by Western ideals and more by fluid global sensibilities. A muse in motion. When V officially became a Louis Vuitton global ambassador in late 2023, Insiders weren't surprised. The partnership seemed almost inevitable, not as a marketing move, but as a meeting of philosophies. Vuitton had spent years pushing heritage craftsmanship into modern narratives, and V embodied that perfectly. A traditionalist who adored art, jazz, and fine tailoring, yet lived in the rhythm of digital age fame. V represents the kind of artistry that fashion has been craving, said Pierre Fontaine, senior fashion editor at Vogue France. He's introspective, gentle, and mysterious. He doesn't sell clothes, he tells stories through them. That storytelling came to its most striking expression at Vogue World 2025, when he and Baek Junseo began collaborating on the modern hanbok months in advance. Sources close to the project told the Korea Times that V was deeply involved in the creative process, choosing fabrics, studying historical references, and even visiting a Jeonju weaving workshop to observe the dyeing of silk threads. Designer Baek later shared that V's first instruction was simple: "I want to wear something that breathes Korea, but speaks to the world." That line became the guiding principle of the entire design. From Seoul to Paris, and back again, V's global journey has always been rooted in Seoul. Even as BTS conquered stadiums and Billboard charts, V remained profoundly tied to Korean aesthetics, the balance between restraint and expression, the harmony between emotion and space. In interviews, he often mentions Korean painter Kim Won-ki and traditional calligraphy as inspirations. "There's a calmness in our art that I love," he told GQ Korea in 2024. "It's not loud, but it stays with you." That quiet power became the signature of his fashion persona. When he arrived at Paris Fashion Week 2024, wearing a minimalist black suit with a pearl earring and unbuttoned silk shirt, journalists described him as the embodiment of quiet luxury. But his Vogue World appearance elevated that subtlety into something profoundly symbolic: Korea itself, walking in harmony with the world. V didn't just wear the hanbok, wrote Chiara Menotti of Vanity Fair Italia. He made the world pause and remember that elegance was born long before the West began defining it. The hanbok as fashion diplomacy isn't new, but V's Vogue World appearance carried unique weight. Korea, now a major cultural exporter through K-pop, cinema, and design, has long sought to reframe how its heritage is perceived abroad. The hanbok, with its flowing lines and deep symbolism, has often been reduced to an aesthetic costume, admired but not always understood. When V stepped onto that stage, that perception shifted. "It was a soft power moment," said cultural analyst Min Hye-jin from Seoul National University. In that outfit, Korea wasn't trying to imitate the world was admiring Korea. Indeed, within days, major fashion outlets began exploring the hanbok's history. The New York Times Style published a feature titled "From Dynasty to Runway, the Hanbok's Global Revival," crediting V for sparking renewed interest. Korean traditional garment designers reported a spike in international inquiries, and hashtags like #HanbokRenaissance trended across social media. In a sense, V had done what few pop stars manage, turned a personal expression into a global cultural event. The artist's eye, V's sensitivity to aesthetics isn't accidental. Beyond his role in BTS, he has long cultivated his identity as a multidisciplinary artist, photographing under the alias Vante, collecting art, and exploring music rooted in soul and jazz. His solo projects, from the nostalgic melancholy of Slow Dancing to the minimalist photography of Me, Myself, and V, reveal a consistent visual language: muted colors, open space, emotional texture. According to Jisoo Kim, curator at the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, V's approach to fashion feels curatorial. He treats each look as an exhibit, not to impress, but to express. His Vogue World outfit was not performance, it was installation art. That artistic mindset is what allowed him to reinterpret the hanbok not as costume, but as concept. When asked by Harper's Bazaar Korea what inspired his performance, V answered, "I wanted to show what silence looks like when it moves." Those words, cryptic yet poetic, encapsulated the emotional gravity of the night. The hanbok was not loud, not flashy, but it resonated with an elegance that lingered long after the lights dimmed. A global reaction. In the hours following Vogue World 2025, social media became a digital museum of admiration. Clips of V walking the runway in slow motion gathered tens of millions of views. Fans described the performance as spiritual, hauntingly beautiful, and the definition of Korean pride. Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol even referenced the event in a cultural address days later, praising the growing influence of Korean creativity on the global stage. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism reported a measurable spike in web traffic to its Learn About Hanbok initiative. Meanwhile, international celebrities joined the chorus of admiration. Zendaya, posting on Instagram, wrote, "This is what fashion should be: meaningful, timeless, and breathtaking." Designer Olivier Roustang of Balmain commented, "Artistry and heritage. V showed us both in one look." Within the fashion industry, insiders began referring to the event as the Seoul Effect. As W Magazine observed, just as Paris shaped fashion's language in the 20th century, Seoul is now shaping its emotion. Cultural legacy in motion. By the following week, discussions about V's hanbok appearance had transcended entertainment. Universities in London and New York held seminars on the intersection of pop culture and heritage fashion. A panel at the Seoul Museum of History titled "Hanbok in the Age of K-Pop" drew record attendance. For many Koreans, the moment carried a deep emotional resonance. Fashion commentator Lee So-ra described it as a collective sigh of recognition. "We've always known the beauty of our traditions," she said, "but seeing them honored, not as museum relics but as living art, that's what V gave us." Behind the seams, the designers, the craft, and the global collaboration that built the modern hanbok. The story of the garment that electrified Vogue World 2025 did not begin on a Paris mood board or a Seoul runway. It began quietly in a small studio near Bukchon Hanok village, where the smell of hand-dyed silk mingled with the sound of needlework and old jazz from a dusty speaker. Here, Baek Jun-seo, the visionary Korean designer behind The Whisper of Joseon, met with V for the first time to discuss the impossible: how to translate 5 centuries of tradition into a single, modern silhouette. Baek remembers that first meeting vividly. Taehyung walked in wearing linen trousers and carrying a vintage camera. He told Vogue Korea, he didn't talk about trends. He talked about feelings, how he wanted the fabric to move like memory. From that moment, the collaboration became less about tailoring and more about storytelling. V brought sketches of antique garments he had photographed at the National Folk Museum. Baek brought swatches of silk that shimmered like the Han River at dusk. Between them, they built a dialogue, heritage translated through instinct. The craft of time. The project unfolded over 4 months, involving 12 artisans from across South Korea. The base fabric was woven in Jeonju, the spiritual heart of hanbok craftsmanship, on looms that have not changed since the 19th century. The weavers used a rare silk blend dyed with natural indigo and oak bark, a process that requires 21 days of rest between each layer of color. The embroidery, the cranes in flight that circled the hem, was stitched by Madame Choi Mi-young, an 82-year-old master embroiderer whose family has practiced the craft for 5 generations. Each crane took her nearly 8 hours to complete. "I thought of my ancestors while sewing," she later told the Korea Jungang Daily. "Seeing V wear it on that stage, I felt as if the past was breathing again." Inside the jacket, hidden from cameras, Baek included a single embroidered phrase in Hangul, "오늘의 빛은 어제의 숨." The light of today is the breath of yesterday. V insisted that line remain secret, a private talisman between artist and craftsman. The Western touch. Although the design was rooted in Korean tradition, the collaboration with Maison Louis Vuitton brought modern technical precision. Parisian ateliers contributed the structural lining that allowed the hanbok's flowing silhouette to hold its shape under the runway lights. The titanium clasp, minimal yet symbolic, was engineered in the same workshop that produces Vuitton's jewelry hardware. According to Elodie Mercier, Vuitton's deputy creative director for men's collections, the challenge was to intervene without erasing. "We wanted the craftsmanship to remain visibly Korean," she explained. "Our role was simply to ensure the garment could move on a global stage without losing its soul." The cross-continental partnership reflected a broader cultural shift in luxury fashion, the recognition that heritage no longer travels one way, from west to east, but in conversation. As Mercier put it, V's hanbok wasn't fusion. It was respect meeting respect. Design language and symbolism. Every element of the ensemble told a story. The color palette, ink black fading into gray, mirrored sumukwa, traditional Korean inkwash painting. The texture of the silk carried a subtle grain, a deliberate imperfection known as buneum, symbolizing humility within beauty. The shape of the sleeves referenced the po, a scholar's robe worn by Joseon-era intellectuals, chosen by V to evoke calm wisdom rather than royal grandeur. The sound of the garment also mattered. During rehearsals, V noticed that the silk rustled too loudly beneath the stage microphones. Rather than replace it, Baek added a second inner layer of ultra-thin organza to soften the sound. He said he wanted the outfit to whisper, not speak, Baek recalled. The finishing touch came in the form of a single accessory, a silver pin designed by Korean jeweler Yoon Seok-jin, shaped like the crescent moon of the Goryeo dynasty. It fastened the collar just below V's throat, a quiet punctuation mark of heritage. Rehearsal and revelation. 2 nights before the show, Vogue's production crew gathered in a converted hangar outside Seoul for the final rehearsal. The stage was minimal, a curved walkway of mirrored glass, surrounded by digital panels projecting slow-motion waves. When V appeared in full costume for the first time, even the lighting technicians paused. "You could hear the air change," said Amelia Grant, Vogue's international events producer. It wasn't a costume reveal, it was an emotional one. Photographer Cho Young-ho, who documented the rehearsal, later described the moment. When the light hit the cranes on his hem, they looked like they were moving. It was like watching history take a breath. The Vogue World creative team quickly decided to extend V's stage time by 30 seconds to allow the cameras to linger. That extra half minute would become the most replayed footage of the event online. Tradition-reframed scholars of Korean visual culture have long argued that hanbok design embodies jong, affection and connection. V's reinterpretations seem to magnify that spirit. He reminded the world that tradition isn't stillness, said Professor Park Jae-min of Ewha Women's University. It evolves every time someone dares to wear it differently. The Hanbok Cultural Foundation issued a statement calling the performance a milestone in the global visibility of Korean attire. Meanwhile, museums in Seoul and Busan began planning exhibitions on modern hanbok and global identity, citing the Vogue World moment as a catalyst. Even abroad, institutions took note. The Victoria and Albert Museum in London contacted Baek Junseo about acquiring sketches and fabric samples for an upcoming exhibition on contemporary Asian fashion. "It was humbling," Baek said. "For decades, our textiles were studied academically, but rarely displayed as living design. V changed that conversation in one night, an intimate process." Though the spectacle dazzled millions, those closest to the project describe it as deeply human. Assistant designer Han Yura recalled how V arrived at the workshop with homemade Taehyung rice cakes for the team. He said, "I'm the one who'll wear it, but it's all of us who'll create it," she remembered. He made everyone feel part of something larger. During the final fitting, when Baek adjusted the sleeve length by a single centimeter, V smiled and said, "Perfection lives in the small details." That line would later circulate online among fans as a kind of unofficial motto for the project. The afterglow. After Vogue World 2025 concluded, the hanbok was carefully packed and sent back to Baek's atelier for preservation. It will eventually be displayed at Seoul's upcoming Museum of Contemporary Korean Design. The garment, according to curators, will travel through New York, Paris, and Tokyo as part of a global exhibit titled Threads of Heritage. In a post-show interview, Baek reflected on the collaboration. "Every generation redefines beauty. What we did was simple. We allowed Korea's beauty to stand on its own, with V as its voice." That simplicity resonated. Fashion critics across continents described the design as poetry made wearable. Vogue UK wrote, "Baek Junseo and V didn't just modernize tradition, they reminded the industry that innovation begins with listening." The world responds. Media, fans, and the cultural ripple of Vogue World 2025, a global awakening. By dawn in Seoul, the night's brilliance had already circled the globe. From Los Angeles to Lisbon, timelines pulsed with the same sequence of images. V standing beneath the soft gold of the stage lights, his silk robe flowing like water. Within 12 hours, the clip had been viewed more than 80 million times across platforms. The world wasn't merely watching a performance, it was witnessing a shift in fashion's emotional gravity. In New York, the Wall Street Journal devoted its weekend culture spread to a single headline, "The Hanbok Goes Global." In Paris, Le Monde Culture called V the first artist to turn traditional Korean dress into a language the runway understands. Even The Guardian noted the sublime restraint that outshone the spectacle around it. Vogue's own international editions competed for poetic phrasing. Vogue Italia declared the look a sigh of silk that carried an empire of history, while Vogue Japan praised it as a performance that made the world bow in stillness. What had begun as a fashion event evolved overnight into a cultural milestone, digital reverberations. Social media became the beating heart of that ripple. On TikTok, creators stitched V's runway walk with traditional Korean drumming, blending eras through 15-second videos that amassed millions of likes. Instagram artists re-illustrated him in Joseon-era court settings, while Twitter fans coined the term #Vogue World Effect to describe how global conversations about Korean heritage exploded after the event. Every few years, fashion finds a moment that rewires its DNA, tweeted fashion journalist Ariane Deroux. Tonight, it was silk, silence, and soul. Within days, luxury analytics firm Lyst reported a 312% spike in global searches for modern hanbok, while small Seoul ateliers saw their international orders double. One brand, Liwa Hanbok, posted that they received inquiries from stylists in New York, Paris, and Lagos. It wasn't a trend, it was recognition. Media voices, global fashion media, were quick to locate the deeper story. Business of Fashion published a think piece titled "The End of Cultural Borrowing, The Rise of Cultural Collaboration," crediting V's performance as the precise moment the dialogue between East and West became equitable. Fashion critic Isabel Morand wrote, "V did not arrive draped in nostalgia. He arrived clothed in evolution. The hanbok no longer asked to be understood, it demanded to be felt." In Seoul, the Korea Herald interviewed cultural historian Dr. Hwang So-yoon, who remarked that the performance reversed the gaze. "For decades, Korean culture has been interpreted through foreign lenses," she said. "That night, the world looked through ours." The fan dimension. For the ARMY, the ever-fervent BTS fandom, the moment transcended fashion. Across fan forums, discussions shifted from fabrics to philosophy. A popular Reddit thread titled "Why V's Hanbok Matters" gathered thousands of comments within hours. One fan wrote, "He didn't just represent Korea, he represented everyone whose culture was ever reduced to costume." Fan artists released digital portraits depicting V as a guardian of tradition, standing between two worlds, one painted in brush ink monochrome, the other in neon. A group of international fans even launched a crowdfunding campaign called Hanbok for the World, aimed at donating modernized hanbok to cultural schools abroad. Within a week, it surpassed its funding goal. Sociologist Dr. Naomi Park, who studies fandom cultures, observed, "What's extraordinary is how ARMY transforms admiration into activism. They don't just consume moments, they multiply their meaning." Cultural diplomacy and real-time governments, too, took notice. Korea's Ministry of Culture quickly announced an initiative titled K-Heritage Now, a program to promote traditional attire through global partnerships. The press release subtly referenced the international resonance sparked by a Korean artist at Vogue World 2025. In France, the Korean Cultural Center planned a summer exhibition called Hanbok Reimagined, pairing historic garments with contemporary couture. Curator Émile Langlois told Le Figaro, "We are witnessing soft power at its most graceful. One performance has achieved what years of diplomacy often cannot: empathy." Meanwhile, universities across Europe and North America began adding modules on fashion and identity in the age of K-pop. Lecture halls filled with students eager to analyze the phenomenon academically. "It's not about celebrity," explained Oxford lecturer Dr. Claire Houghton. "It's about the return of meaning in an industry that had forgotten sincerity." The industry reacts. Luxury houses, sensing a paradigm shift, quietly reassess their strategies. Several creative directors publicly praised the performance. Others privately instructed their teams to study the hanbok structure. Within a month, early sketches for upcoming collections began to show subtle echoes: curved collars, layered drapes, and muted color gradients reminiscent of Korean ink art. At Milan Fashion Week later that year, Vogue Business noted a Korean minimalism undercurrent running through multiple shows. Designers avoided calling it inspiration. Many called it conversation. "We're not borrowing aesthetics," said Italian designer Marco Rossi. "We're learning humility from them." V himself seemed quietly amused by the attention. When a Vogue US reporter asked if he expected such reaction, he smiled and said, "The hanbok has always been beautiful." The world just looked up and saw it, a new narrative of representation beyond glamour, the night ignited a broader dialogue about cultural equity in fashion. For years, representation had often meant inclusion without influence, faces without voices. V's appearance inverted that equation. An Asian artist leading a global fashion narrative on his own terms. Representation used to be a seat at the table, wrote columnist Melissa Chan in The Atlantic. V built his own table, set it in Seoul, and invited the world to dine. Scholars likened it to a cultural inversion. Where Western couture once interpreted the East through exoticism, the East now defined modernity through authenticity. It was not appropriation nor tokenism, it was authorship. In the streets of Seoul, in the weeks after the show, Seoul's Insadong district became a pilgrimage site for tourists and locals alike. Tailors reported new clients requesting the V-cut, referring to the relaxed hanbok silhouette he wore. Cafes decorated with screenshots from Vogue World served drinks named Silk Sky and Whisper of Joseon. Street musicians played jazz versions of traditional gugak melodies, echoing V's own love for the genre. The synergy between heritage and modern life felt tangible. "You can see people wearing simplified hanbok jackets over jeans now," said designer Han Soo-hyun. "It's not costume anymore, it's confidence." A global conversation on heritage. By midsummer, the dialogue had expanded far beyond Korea. In Lagos, a fashion collective held an event titled Threads of Origin, inspired by V's appearance, encouraging designers to reinterpret their own national garments. In Mexico City, indigenous weavers cited the performance as proof that cultural dress can live in haute couture. Fashion anthropologist Dr. Yara Benitez summarized it best. V didn't globalize the hanbok, he globalized pride. The ripples touched communities who had never seen themselves reflected in global runways. For many, it became a metaphor. When one tradition rises with dignity, others remember they can too. A quiet revolution. Months later, as Vogue World released its official behind-the-scenes documentary, one scene lingered with viewers. V alone in the dressing room, adjusting the titanium clasp at his collar, humming softly to himself. There was no dialogue, just the rustle of silk and the faint sound of Seoul's night traffic. That stillness captured what the moment truly meant. It wasn't about spectacle or viral metrics. It was about a country's history finding new breath through an artist who understood silence as strength. Cultural critic Min Jae-young concluded in Ella Korea, "In the noise of global pop culture, V taught us that tradition speaks most clearly when it whispers." Legacy in Motion, How Vogue World 2025 Changed the Future of Fashion and Identity After the Applause. The curtain fell on Vogue World 2025, but the story it told refused to fade. In the months that followed, editors, designers, and cultural thinkers continued to orbit around one question. What exactly had happened that night? Was it simply a fashion triumph, or had the industry witnessed a turning point in how identity and artistry coexist? In the words of Vogue's global editorial director, Anna Wintour, what V accomplished was not a performance. It was a proposal for what fashion could become if it chose sincerity over spectacle. That sentiment echoed across continents. From Seoul's fashion schools to Paris's ateliers, the night became shorthand for something larger, the possibility that tradition and innovation could share the same language, the legacy of a garment. Months after the show, the modern hanbok, nicknamed the Whisper of Joseon, was displayed under glass at the Seoul Museum of Contemporary Korean Design. Visitors queued for hours to see it, some bringing flowers, others sketching its folds. A small sign beside the display read, "Worn by Kim Taehyung V of BTS at Vogue World 2025, designed by Baek Jun-seo, crafted by 12 artisans." A dialogue between time and today. Baek, ever humble, refused to call it a masterpiece. "It's a conversation that hasn't ended," he said in a museum interview. "Every time someone looks at it differently, the design continues to live." Curators noted how people approached the garment in silence, as if visiting a sacred object. The silk, illuminated by soft light, seemed to hold not just fabric and thread, but an entire nation's collective memory. Educational ripples. Within Korea, universities began offering seminars on the hanbok renaissance. Professors dissected V's look as a case study in cultural semiotics. In fashion theory classes, students debated whether the performance represented decolonization, modernization, or simply beauty unbound. At Yonsei University, a visiting Italian lecturer observed, "We came to Korea to teach design, but now we're learning how design can teach us history." Globally, art institutions adopted the performance into their curricula. The Parsons School of Design in New York included it in a course titled Heritage and Haute Couture. Students analyzed the ways local culture could shape global fashion narratives without falling into exoticism. Economic resonance. The influence rippled into economics as well. According to the Korean Ministry of Trade, exports of contemporary hanbok increased by 140% in the 6 months following the show. Seoul Fashion Week reported record international attendance, with journalists crediting the V effect for renewed global interest in Korean design. Startups focusing on sustainable hanbok production gained foreign investors, and small craftspeople, once confined to niche markets, found themselves collaborating with international houses. One artisan from Jeonju described receiving an email from a French designer who wanted to learn traditional dyeing techniques. "For the first time," she said, "they asked to learn, not to copy." The personal legacy. For V, the aftermath unfolded quietly. He returned to music, to photography, to his understated routines. When asked in a Harper's Bazaar interview how he viewed the Vogue World night months later, he paused before replying, "The hanbok didn't change me. It reminded me who I already was." He spoke of how wearing the garment made him feel rooted, yet free, a duality he described as the essence of art. "I want people to see that tradition doesn't limit creativity," he said. "It gives it depth." Fans embraced the sentiment, quoting it across social media, etching it into artwork and fan essays. One post read, "He doesn't perform culture, he lives it." From moment to movement, cultural movements often begin not with declarations, but with gestures. The way V adjusted his sleeve, the way the cranes shimmered as he turned, the stillness that silenced a crowd trained to applaud. That night, a new template for cultural representation took form, one that valued authenticity over assimilation, collaboration over consumption. Fashion houses began hiring cultural consultants rather than trend forecasters. Designers invited artisans into the creative process, not as ornamentation, but as equals. In London, Ghanaian-British designer Kweku Mensah credited the performance with inspiring him to revisit his own heritage. "Seeing V honor his roots gave me permission to honor mine," he told Dazed. "It wasn't about Korea, it was about courage." Academic reflections. Cultural theorists would later define the Vogue World 2025 event as a moment of synesthetic heritage, where sight, sound, and memory converged to form new meaning. In their essays, they argued that V's hanbok blurred boundaries between nation and individual, past and present, craft and couture. Philosopher Dr. Lee Hyun-woo wrote in Korean Quarterly, "He wore more than silk. He wore the invisible fabric that binds identity to imagination." In Paris, symposiums on fashion and memory cited the performance as a model for decolonizing luxury aesthetics. A critic at Le Monde Diplomatique described it as an act of cultural self-translation that required no subtitles. Artistic evolution. The moment also reshaped the aesthetics of modern performance. Music videos, stage designs, and photo editorials began to feature reinterpreted traditional attire with newfound respect. BTS's influence, already monumental, entered a reflective era, one where artistry intertwined with heritage more intimately than ever. V himself continued this thread in his visual projects. His later photography exhibition, Stillness in Motion, showcased portraits of elderly artisans and traditional dancers. The opening piece was titled Breath of Silk, a quiet nod to the Vogue World garment. Art critic Ha Ji-yeon described it as a visual requiem to the quiet hands that built Korea's beauty. The world adapts. In the broader landscape, global fashion began embracing cultural specificity rather than flattening it. Vogue World 2025 was followed by a wave of runways celebrating local craftsmanship, from Indian khadi to Nigerian aso oke, from Peruvian alpaca weaving to Japanese indigo dye. This wasn't coincidence, it was contagion, the kind that spreads through admiration rather than imitation. "We're learning to look sideways, not upward," said British designer Charlotte Reed, referring to fashion's shifting gaze toward non-Western sources of innovation. For the first time in decades, authenticity became aspirational. Echoes in music and film cinema, too, took cues from the event's subtle grandeur. Directors began incorporating hanbok-inspired costuming into futuristic settings, merging heritage with science fiction aesthetics. In 2026, the Korean sci-fi film Ecliptica featured a costume design credited as post-Vogue hanbok, a direct homage to V's performance. Soundtracks from major fashion events began using traditional Korean instruments fused with ambient electronic music. The soft resonance of the gaegeum became, for a moment, the sound of global modernity. It was as if the world had discovered that innovation doesn't mean escaping history. It means dancing with it. What remains years from now, when historians write of the early 2020s, they may mark that night not just as a fashion milestone, but as a turning point in cultural empathy. The runway, once a mirror for power, became a window into understanding. For V, it was less revolution than revelation. "I just wanted people to feel peace," he said later. And yet, in his quiet way, he redefined an industry's vocabulary. The hanbok will one day fade, the silk's sheen dimmed by time and light, but the idea it carried, that tradition and modernity are not rivals but reflections, will endure. Epilogue. The breath between eras. There's an image that lingers in collective memory. V standing still as the music swells, cranes gliding around his hem like living brushstrokes. Behind him, the screen dissolves into dawn, the horizon between centuries. In that moment, he is not just an artist or an idol. He is a bridge, a reminder that heritage is not what anchors us to the past, but what steadies us as we step into the future. As Elle Korea wrote in its closing essay on the performance, he turned the runway into a river, where the old flows toward the new, carrying grace in its current. And perhaps that is the truest legacy of Vogue World 2025. That one artist, clothed in silk and sincerity, reminded the world that the future is most beautiful when it remembers where it came from.